All right, everyone, come on in, come on in. Thank you all so much for being here. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome back to the Wives Club. Allow me to introduce myself and then I'll let the ladies do the same. Tonight we are doing our first ever smoke show. So if you ever had a question for the Wives Club, tonight is your night. So for anyone who doesn't know me, hi, I am Maggie and I am a former wife. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. In 2021, I actually booked a session with the late, great Kevin Samuels, and it wasn't for me. I know and accept that I am average, but I always used to get convicted whenever he would say, "Where are the older women to teach the young?" So I booked a session to ask his permission to stand up this community of like-minded and marriage-minded women because I firmly believe whether you are currently married, used to be married, or want to be married, we should carry ourselves as wives because wives move differently. And so I'm so grateful. Not only did Kevin give us his permission, he actually came up with the name, The Wives Club. So it started with just me, and then AV joined us in the Wives Club. AV, please introduce yourself.
Sorry, going ahead and unmuting myself, right? Too funny. It's good to see you guys tonight. My name is AV. I am a future wife. What does that mean? That means I've never been married. It also means that I also had an opportunity to meet with the late and great Kevin Samuels. He kind of coached me from the perspective of getting ready to be married. I learned so much, and I'm so excited to share some of those strategies and tactics from those coaching sessions for our future wives out there. But I do think that there's information that can be gleaned whether you are a former wife, future wife, or current wife. Really, really good stuff. And I'm so excited to be back this week.
Thank you so much, AV. And then after AV joined us in the Wives Club, Lisa joined us in the Wives Club. Lisa, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am Lisa. I am a current wife of 17 years. My husband and I have a 5-year-old daughter. My husband is also a military veteran. He's what Kevin would consider a blue collar um, Henry, I guess. And I'm happy to be back to share some information from a current wife's perspective and to keep doing the good work.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And then after Lisa joined us in the Wives Club, Hermeisha joined us. So Hermeisha, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone. So my name is Hermeisha, and I represent as a former wife. And so I had the opportunity, just like AV, to have a few sessions with Kevin, and he, to me, was like a mentor. He coached me, and at the time, was coaching me on how to be a better wife. So I speak from one who has been married and desire to remarry again, but I represent a former wife, and happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Hermeisha. So I'll give you all a little bit of information about me, and then we are going to take your questions. So if you have questions for us tonight, you can type them in the chat, and we will actually drop the link if anybody wants to ask us questions. You've got about an hour of our time, so you can pick our brain. So I am a former wife, like Hermeisha. I got married at 25 to my college boyfriend, was married for 10 years, and I absolutely loved being married. However, I raised my hand to say I did have those modern woman tendencies, and I approached it as a 50-50. I can do anything a man can do until I'm 65, until I hit the wall, 2 kids and all those responsibilities later. So unfortunately, the marriage did end in divorce, but I'm so happy that we are amicable and co-parent very well. Since the divorce, I've been in a long-term relationship for another 10, 12 years with a high-value man, which means I have had to do a lot of work to change my mindset, to get on the program so that I can be more of a support system instead of trying to drive the bus. So I have bumped my head, I have skinned my knee, but that's what we talk about here. And again, the Wives Club we're going into year 3. This is our first few episodes outside of the wall because several of you all have asked us to share, but we were getting together every week. We would review Kevin's shows and use them as a lesson plan for our action items and in a way to improve all of our outcomes. So we are here to have the conversation, learn from each other, and hopefully you all can learn as well. So thank you all for coming in. I am actually going to start with a question that we received last episode. You all might have remembered I did a little bit of struggle streaming towards the end. Everything blinked out. And Brandon L. Jett actually had several questions in the chat for all of us. So we are going to start with where we left off with Brandon's questions. He has a question for all of us. I'll read them and then we will answer. And then again, if you all have questions, please put them in the chat. All right. So Brandon asked for Maggie, at what specific point in your previous marriage did reality set in and you realized this is it? My marriage is officially ending. All right. So, yes, thank you all for liking the live stream. So, I will say this. All right. Let me put myself on the hot seat. Everybody's going to take their turn. I can actually remember it very well. And like I said, I take responsibility for thinking that marriage, or at least the type of marriage that I wanted, would be a 50-50 partnership, because I'll never forget. And I've shared this with you all. When we got divorced, my ex-husband said, "Well, I thought you were driving this bus." And that was a moment that is seared into my memory as far as what happens when you take over and try to co-pilot and change the order of how things naturally should be. But to answer your question specifically, Brandon, yes, and he's here. He has the same question for Hermeisha, so she's coming up. So we were married and we have 2 sons from the marriage. They're teenagers now, so I don't regret it. I'm grateful that I do have a family. But we planned for both children. We were married about 6, almost 7 years before the boys came. So got married right after college and took those first few years to travel and do things together. I went back to graduate school to get that MBA because that's so important. I use it every day. But we wanted to wait until we had, the careers together, had the home, had everything, boxes checked. And I had been working, 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 and I was so looking forward to being a mom. Now I know that's really, my happy place, being that nurturing person, but I got caught up in the corporate rat race. And I remember asking my husband at the time when we found out we were expecting, could I take a year off? Because we had put off having kids, wanted to make sure everything was right. I really wanted to be home to bond for that first year. And you all know, if you've worked any job, you get your usual 6 weeks. But then even if you take, what is it, FMLA and all these other leaves, you may get 4 to 6 months out of it. But I really wanted a full year. And he said no. And the reason why is he said, we need both incomes. And it was like a dagger in my heart, because what I realized is that I had put myself in a position to be the breadwinner. And the one time that I could never get back, being a first-time mom and a new mom, I was home. I was able to make a few months work out of it, but I couldn't even take Marcus to the daycare when I had to go back to work, um, because I had become a paycheck. And I'll never forget it. And I don't blame anybody but myself. So, young ladies, I would just offer you this. If family is important to you, find a man that you can get on his program and live on his means. Because if you put yourself out in front, you're going to have to maintain what you started. And I learned that the hard way. And that's when I knew I had messed up. Hermeisha, your turn on the hot seat. Same question, I will read it. At what point in your previous marriage did reality set in and you realized this is it? My marriage is officially ending.
I said, whew, can y'all hear me now? Okay. I said, it's already getting hot in here. um, I'm reflecting on this question because the temptation, if we're going to be all the way real, is to not take accountability. The temptation is to just sort of like be other focused and to talk about everything he did wrong and all the things. But part of my growth and healing is I can only speak the truth in love and take responsibility where need be. So I just want to put that out there. So in reflecting on this question, I would say with prudence, but also honesty, one thing that sticks out to me is, uh, it's almost like after you have done all that you can. I think that's a song by Donnie McClurkin. After you've done all you can, you just stand. That actually just came to me because I would say after calculating, it was about at least 15 grand in marital therapy. After about 10 grand in my own individual therapy, uh, and then some more grand with Kevin. um, I realized that I think this might be it. Um, because I can only do my part, right? I can only learn better. I can only be the best wife I know how to be. And for me, much like when I hear Maggie share her story about the working, I resonate with that as well because part of my growth was also realizing that I don't want to steer this ship. Like I talked about before, ladies, that my hair was falling out. I was over 200 pounds. I'm a former athlete, a basketball player, a track star. I did all the things, and that's too much weight on my 5'5" frame, if you could imagine. And so it took a toll, and your body starts to cry out. And I look up and I said, I can't do this anymore. But at that time, there was a necessity for it, right? And so um, that was not my intent going into it. And I'm not saying that was the main reason. I can't put my finger on what it was, but to answer the question, I know that after you try to solve the problem and you do the therapy, you do the coaching, you do the analysis, you do the praying, you fasting, you're doing the things that only you know to do, and there's stagnation. There was a moment in my heart where I said, Lord, I don't know what else to do, quite frankly. Um, uh, the other thing I would say is, uh, I would encourage as a former wife, this is why it's kind of hard to pinpoint what was that moment, right? I think that we need to make a practice of decluttering our marriages, right? So that you don't look up and there's a whole trash behind you, right? So when I say declutter, where there's ongoing confession of pain and hurt, sin, and there's forgiveness and there's reconciliation, there's ongoing of that happening so that you're regularly decluttering your relationship so that you don't look up and you're like, how do we get here? Where we run the therapy in a crisis, right? And so I would just say that it was when I looked up and I had done the things I knew to do. And then I realized I don't know what else to do. And if my ex was here, he would say, I would tell him, I don't know what else to do. What do you want me to do? And there was no response to that. And so I didn't know what to do. Um, and then ended up on the other side of this. So that would be my response.
Thank you so much, Hermeisha. Whew, okay, the hot seat is hot, but we're moving around. And again, these are the questions that Brandon gave us last time. So we're starting with his questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to move on to AV and to Lisa, but I just saw this comment from Real Bravado. I was having this discussion last night with my lady friend, and she said there's no way she could step away from her job. Unfortunately, I had to tell her there's no real future, and I was very disappointed. Yes, all of us have had corporate experience, and all of us would choose relationship over that career. But I'm going to continue on. Lisa, the next question is for you. Brandon wrote, as a current wife and wife of a blue collar worker, what has been the biggest challenge in your marriage, and what did you do to overcome it?
The biggest challenge that I can think of to date was letting my husband lead early on in my marriage. And the reason I say that is because when I look back at all the times when I was early in the marriage, when I was leading, like uh, the biggest one I can think of is like choosing our first home. Um, my husband wasn't so sure about it. Even my dad to this day, he's like, I don't know about that first home y'all got. It caused a lot of issues and trouble because it was something I was just so passionate about at the time, and kind of leading that bus and driving that bus. But and also like another thing Kevin said that spoke to me when I used to watch his shows is that he was talking about leave and cleave. You kind of get away from your family and and build that relationship with your husband and establish your own family and do that. So I feel like when my husband had us move away from where I was working, had plenty of job opportunities in my field of where I worked, and I moved somewhere with my husband to where his field was going to take off. And then I was more at home and not really working, and then my health issues. But it's when let my husband lead and seeing, even at the time it was hard for me, but at the time when I look back and reflect, all the times that I let my husband lead and take over and be in charge was where we had the greatest successes in our marriage and our life. Um, and it was more, so I wouldn't say that we had bad things happen when I was trying to lead, but it was learning lessons. And that's why I feel passionate about talking about it now and answering questions like this, because I can say, you know what, I was doing that. I was being very modern early on and kind of hard headed too. And when I look back, when I let go and followed my husband and did what he was asking me to do and didn't really complain and make a big fuss about it, we've had a lot of success because like the second house we purchased, it was a great investment for us. We made a lot of money with that home and continue to do so. And my husband's job really, his job really took off, and he got better positions and stuff. And as I didn't find as many work opportunities, then I had health issues to take care of. And I've spoken about before, my husband kind of, when I couldn't work, he just took everything over and joined the military, did everything to make sure I was okay and that we was okay as a family. And this is something I would never have imagined him to do. But now that I think about it and just looking at my father and the life that my parents led, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of like, this makes sense. But it took me a while. And so I say the biggest challenge I had was just trying to get back. It's not that I didn't have the example growing up, but it was like I kind of lost that mindset. Like I've spoke before about being around other people who were maybe raised differently, or just the whole modern woman mindset altogether, just kind of getting caught up in that confusion. But once I did realize that, this is not such a bad thing as being a wife to do, because I was like, no, I'm Miss Independent, as you want to call it. But I'd say that was a really big challenge the first few years of my marriage. And I'm just happy to say that now, being married 17 years, I can look back and say, that was really, I would have had less struggle or a hard of a time if I would have just not been so modern woman about it, to speak the truth. So that was a real difficult for me. But I'd say in every example I could possibly think of in my head, when I let my husband take over and make decisions, and me just support that. And the bigger factor is not just let him do everything, but me being supportive of it and seeing how it ends up working out. And we've always been blessed, and we continue to be blessed. Um, you know, we had a hard time getting my daughter here. It's just so many things I can think of that would say everything has worked out the way it's supposed to because I wasn't standing in the way or not supporting my husband. And I truly understand what the word help meet means that I learned about in Bible study and in premarital classes and all that. It really makes sense now when it wasn't making sense when I was 26 and they were like, you're going to have to say you're going to follow and obey. And I was just rolling my eyes. I remember that. So that's what I was, how I would answer that question about that BLJ sent us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate that. AV, we're coming to you. I did see a couple comments here. I just want to shout out. Rodney says husbands need, not want, the support of their wives. Yeah, that one really struck me. I absolutely love it. All right, so we're going to come to AV, definitely not least, but last. So this is a question from Brandon. I see some more coming in, and I've dropped the link. AV, as a future wife, what advice would you give a young woman who has an excellent job and well paid, who desires marriage but doesn't have a husband?
Yeah, firstly, I thank you, Brandon, for the question. I think this is a good one and not something that we all talk about enough. Me being in corporate America myself for nearly 13, actually 15 years, right? And I have a good job myself. You know, I do really well, mid six figures, pushing 200, which puts me outside of a bracket of a lot of people, right? But what I would say to a young woman that has a similar situation and has an excellent job, you really have to understand what your priorities are. Because as a person that has climbed this corporate ladder for a really long time, I'm ready to get off. And I'm saying that because it is very draining. We've had those conversations here, but the only reason why I would stay as a person in their 30s is, and this is what I would encourage young women to do, is to acquire the skills to be beneficial for a man later, right? So if you're going to be in those jobs, okay, what does that job do for your long-term success when it comes to prioritizing the relationship? Because for me, I wish instead of job first, relationship second, I wish it was almost different, where it was relationship first as a priority and then the job second. Because I'm going out and acquiring those skills not to make money for myself, but ultimately to be able to, bring that to my husband. If I'm a great organizer and I'm learning from industry leaders on how to do that better, and if I can build that up to bring my best self to my relationship and find ways to be organized in that way, where maybe it's something he hasn't seen before and a different level of organization, I think those are really, really good attributes to have as a future wife. So that's what I would encourage young women to do. And shout out to Real Bravado Network. I'm really sorry, brother. With the comment that you made, that really hit home, especially when it comes to like some of the elements in this conversation that we're having right now, specifically because what did Real Bravado Network say? He said he saw what the response was and he's like, this is not going to work. That's the reality of it. You can have these high paying, high powered jobs, but what does that mean? You're going to have less time to date. You're going to have less time for the man. You're going to have less time for family. And it could be that, yeah, the money is really good. But let's say you decide, I'm only going to stay in it for a little bit of time. That's okay too. But understand what that exit strategy looks like, right? A lot of people get in it and they stay for too long, right? And it's interesting because last week I was talking to some women in my circle that have been around for a long time, um, both 40 plus, closer to the 50 end. And, I've always considered them mentors. And I was honest. I was just like, hey, I'm considering leaving corporate America. And it's not for a relationship, but I kind of hinted at, I need more time on my plate because relationship is becoming a priority when you're hitting the wall at 33, right? It's there. It's coming. But here's the thing. You know what they said to me? They said that I should not change anything in my life for a man. Do you know those two women are single? So that's exactly why I'm saying flip it. You want the relationship, put it as number one. But how can you acquire the skills in corporate America to take that back to your family, building the nuclear family, building your household, and bringing those skills to benefit your husband? So, yeah, took a little bit of time to think about it. Really want to thank Brandon for the question, but I hope that helps a lot of future wives out there and current wives too, for sure.
Thank you so much, AV. We're going to do another round, and I have some questions coming through. So, Lisa, get ready. You're coming up next. You all remember Kevin always used to say this, he had an ironclad confidentiality about who he booked sessions with. We're the ones saying, I met with him. I met with him. I met with him. But if you all remember, one of the things Kevin used to say, he used to talk to high-powered women a lot and how they would break down in tears in his office, basically saying they would give it all away for a man. And we've had those high-powered jobs. I've had the big bonuses, all of that. And yes, excuse me. Yes, it's good in the moment, but Kevin also used to say, where do you want to be at 50 and where do you want to be at 60? So last thing about what AB just said, corporate America shows us a lot about what we want and can also show us a lot about what we don't want. So be mindful, listen to everybody's advice, if you will. But one of the filters that I use is I look at their life and would I want their life? And if I can see something in them that I want to emulate, then I listen to absorb. If I'm looking at them saying, I don't want anything like what you're talking about, I just listen to be polite. That's a little thing from me. All right. So let me scroll up. We're getting some really good engagement. Thank you all so much. So, Lisa, this is for you. Shelby is asking, and thank you, Shelby, watching from Facebook. Lisa, you have a stand up husband. Do you think it would stay or you would have stayed in a modern mindset if you didn't move or unfortunately have your illness?
Um, yes, I think I would have stayed in a modern mindset because I was a job humper. I'm a job hopper. If they offer me more money, I would jump from job to job to job. I guess that's part of being a zennial. Well, I don't know what I am, but I'm 44. So that's what I would do. I would jump from one hot job to another hot job. They pay me more. Here I go. I go. And so if I wasn't focused, and if I'm pretty sure I'd still be doing the same thing, I probably would be a very unhappy single woman with a lot of money and going on all kind of girl trips and stuff. I'm sure. Um, but my health also took a factor, and I like to mention that because getting these great jobs and everything and making all this money is one thing, but it don't take a car accident. Anything could set you back, or if you don't have family to fall back on, or anything. So I don't know where it would be if I were if I did not have my husband in my life. I think I would be single and probably on here yelling at Kevin if he was still with us, saying, "Well, why am I that way?" and all that. I mean, I see myself in the women on his show, and I'm like, that could have been me. That's what got me to want to. Um, After my husband showed me the show, I was like, I could have been that young lady. That was me 10 years ago, working at where I was working or wherever. That was my attitude. So yes, I think I would be in a similar situation to some of the females I see on Kevin's show in the past. And I think that's why my heart felt like, I should talk about this and say, there's a better way, and why we need to support our men and why we need our men. Because I definitely need my husband. I would hate to be a burden to my parents at this point in life with my health and not being able to work or whatever would happen to me. And my husband has made that possible. So I'm very thankful and grateful for him. I hope that answers the question.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, we definitely need our men. So we have a question here from Real Bravado Network, and I think I understand. If you want to add any context, you can. But he says, this is a question for the former wives, so me and Hermeisha. He says, please forgive me if this has been covered. Why was it so important to hold on to your previous way of engaging in your marriage? So I think what you're asking is, why did it take us so long to get on the program and figure out we really didn't want to lead this? And I'll just say this for me, if that's the question. Um, Lisa kind of hinted onto it. I come from a two-parent family, African immigrants. I had the example. My parents are still together to this day. I learned how to do all the things in the home and serve. And I don't know if it is, college, going to a really good liberal arts school or corporate America, but I really believed that I could do it all. And I don't know if it, like Kevin always used to say, he didn't blame the women because we've been lied to, right? We were sold this dream that we could have the corporate career, we could have the fancy vacations, we could have the kids in private school, we could have, the six-figure husband, we could do it all at the same time. And you couldn't tell me anything. I knew that I was that unicorn and I was going to make it happen. What I didn't account for, and what I always want to tell young ladies, is I still have a lot of youthful energy, but at 47, I definitely feel myself slowing down. And when I look at my male counterparts that are approaching 50, they're investing, they're buying properties, they're starting other businesses, like they're putting it into second gear. And so what I didn't account for is after two kids, the boys are 22 months apart, after two kids, like the speed and the energy that was required to keep that big six-figure job and try to run a home the way that I want to run a home and cook and do all of that was going to wear me out. So I think to answer your question, I was stubborn. And I take full responsibility of that. And then also, and I've shared with you all, I was competitive and not in a way that I felt like I was intentionally competing, but I was one of those women that wanted my man to do more. I wanted you to be, okay, you have this hourly job, but I want you to go for the promotion. I want you to do that. So I thought if I did that, it would subliminally motivate him to do the same. And Kevin always used to get on women, young women hear me. The man he is the man he is. He will change if and when he wants to. We cannot wrestle them down, manipulate, pout, cry. None of that will work. We have to find where he is and decide if we can get on his program or not. So that's the answer. Hermeisha, I'm going to come to you and let you answer.
Yeah. So for me, one thing I'm thinking about as I reflect is at the end of the day, I was learning how to be a wife too. At the same time, I realized that too. Um, and I know my father was kind of, he raised me, but, he did the best he knew how to teach me how to be a woman and eventually a wife. I saw the transition where I stopped wearing Arizona baggy jeans and he was trying to put me in dresses and things and made sure I had my hair curled and all the things. But I would say in my marriage, uh, I was learning so much, and I think this is true for all of us. We come in with that, as Kevin would say, the modern mindset, because at the end of the day, that's what we're living, we're absorbing, you know. Um, and I would say my ex at the time had it. He had it right because he was saying he wanted me to homeschool. I knew nothing of homeschooling. He recommended it. He said he wanted us to live on one income. I knew nothing of that. He recommended it, and so I was actually learning through him, quite honestly, to how to do this thing. And so I would tell him, hey, I don't know nothing about homeschool because I was public school, but he grew up homeschooled. His mother homeschooled them, and he's brilliant now. To give him that, and and I ended up homeschooling my girls, but it changed where stressors hit and things of that nature, and transitions and things. Where for me, after learning how to operate in that wife mindset, and then being comfortable after homeschooling, I'm like, wait a minute, what I thought was scary, this is actually I actually like this. I like to keep a home. I like to be home with my children. But what I realized was that um, the transition, my ex was coming out of the military, and I think that threw us off as well. And so, in thinking I was helping, I said, well, I have a master's degree. I'm employable, and if I ever wanted to work, I want to always have control of my hours. So I said I can sit for the exam and get licensed, and I can open a private practice. And I did that. But that was only supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to be for like a couple of years or so that I was going to hire and bring someone on. But what happened was I worked it year one, year two, year three, year four. You're making money. It's grossing six figures plus. We stopped living off of one income because we had all the extra things to do other things. And I would say from that point on, I got used to living at a certain lifestyle. And then when you look up and I'm overweight and I'm stressed, it's like Maggie said, you got to keep it going because now you're not living under one income. Now you got debt. Now you got all the things, right? And the family is sustained under that. And so I think I answered your question. It wasn't just this sort of um, it was almost like an evolution of things, if you will. And so I would say at the end of the day, again, that's why I echo your home is the priority at the end of the day. And I had that, but something shifted in our dynamic and other things happened. Again, it's not just one thing, but I can just speak to myself and my mindset out as I was learning to be a wife and growing in that. And then, it all kind of hit the fan.
All right. Thank you so much, Hermeisha. I see we lost AV, but hopefully she will join us soon because I was going to come to her. We do have a question coming up from Mr. Mustachio. Thank you so much for being here. So he has a question. It's Elisa. I'm going to start with you and then we'll come around. So he says, question for all of you and narrowing it down to just three. So what are the three most important tenets to a successful and content marriage? Lisa, let's start with you.
Okay, three successful tenants. All right. Okay, mine would be follow your husband's lead. um, and this is what I've been doing lately. So this is what's been working, and it works very well. Follow my husband's lead. Um, be supportive of whatever he's doing, his endeavors, his his job, stuff like that, and I think give him peace and create peace for him. I'd say those are the three main things that I've realized maybe in the last 10 years that have been most beneficial to our relationship and keeping our home very happy. So those are the three.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so a little hack, and one of the things that I've learned whenever you have a question, just try to compartmentalize it with past, present, and future. So I'm going to try and answer this again as a former wife who has bumped her head. And also remembering there are different types of marriage. We know, the type of marriage that we want in the wives club, but, there are people that marry for a variety of reasons. There could be marriage for papers, there could be, marriage for politics. I'm not going to sit here and say what is better than another, but in all marriages, number one, I would say have a clear expectation of what kind of marriage we're going to have. What is the goal of this marriage? Are we going to have a provider and then we're going to have like a wife, stay at home or support system? Are we going to be a childless couple and we're both going to work and we're going to try to climb the corporate ladder and see each other on the weekends? Are we basically going to live two separate lives, but we're going to be, camera ready for that photo op? Whatever it is, and I'm not the one to say what's best for you, but the husband and the wife need to have a clear conversation because I think what happens is it's not just conversation for the sake of talking, but setting that expectation. This is the type of wife I want to be. This is the type of husband I'm looking for. And the man needs to know the same about himself so you all know if you're compatible. That would be the first one. And then when you're number two would be when you're in the marriage. We think about 50-50 and we talk about 50-50, but I was talking to my guy and, he said it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. So both spouses have to be 100% in their role. So if you are, and this is a quote from him, if you are the man, you don't need to come home and tell your wife about, oh, I hate my job and my boss is bothering me. If she's doing her part of the bargain, you are to shoulder that burden. That is your responsibility. What did Kevin say? Men carry the weight on their shoulders, not for women's hips. Likewise, ladies, if we have a man who is going out there and eating, you know what, to provide for the family, you pick up the slack where he can't. You are 100% responsible for, let's say it's the home and raising the children and the meals or doctor's appointments in school. Whatever you all decide your roles are going to be, that would be my number two. You have to go full out on that because a little thing that men hate, they hate seeing us do it for the boss, the pastor, the other people that aren't the man that is obligated to die for us if needed. And then lastly, I would just say, and I know this is successful and content, and again, that's subjective. I would just have a plan for the future. Life comes in phases, relationships go in phases. You know, Kevin used to talk about that IKEA marriage. So have regular check ins with your guy, even me after all these years. You know, hey, am I doing, anything that's getting on your nerves? But just have that, 1, 3, 5 year check in so you're moving towards the same goal and destination. So those would be my three. All right, Hermeisha, I'm coming to you. What are your three tenets for a successful and content marriage?
I was still thinking about that question actually. That's a really thoughtful question. As I'm still thinking through it, I would say number one, uh, you want to determine the foundation of your marriage, and it kind of goes to what Maggie just said, like to a certain degree of uh, how you what type of marriage you want to have, in a sense. But in addition to that, I would say, what's the foundation? At the end of the day, when y'all start getting on each other's nerves, what's your foundation that's going to keep you going? What's that rock? What's that thing for you all? And for many people, it's different. Uh, and keeping that at the forefront of your mind, because it's going to get crazy. It's going to get chaotic. It's going to get overwhelming. You're going to go through many different seasons, but if you can always go back to your why are we here? Why are we married? Why did we choose each other? And what is our foundation? That's important. Um, I would also say, number two, I would say be willing to uh, always be quick to forgive. It's so important because it's the little foxes that threaten the garden. The little things that get overlooked, that become big things. And you look up, bitterness is there, resentment is there, right? So, sort of along the lines of that daily decluttering, if you will. And one way to do that is setting some time, and I teach this in my private practice, setting some time to do some holding time. Check in with each other. How did the day go? And, you know, if there's things that you want to share with your spouse that was hurtful, that you guys have an opportunity to both share and seek forgiveness to release that. That's part of decluttering, so that stuff doesn't build up into resentment and bitterness. And number three, um, I would say, I guess in the heart of all that, let love lead you. Love meaning the action of, um, kind of goes back to like, what's your foundation, but also uh, the core of why you said yes to the person, right? What was that why for you? And always being willing to nurture that, always being willing to, um, love can look like serving. Love can look like saying, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Love could look like saying, hey, you hurt me, that hurts. Can we talk about that? Right? Love is an action. And so those are the three things I would say.
Thank you so much, Hermeisha. I appreciate that. All right, so a couple things in the comments, and then we'll go back on for another lap. We'll see if AB is able to join us, but I know she was on low battery power, so hopefully she can get that up. So we still build it as we fly it. Thank you all for being here through our struggle streaming. So I just wanted to close out with what Rio Roboto has added to his question and comment. And it's actually so sad. He says his lady is a secretary making 32K a year, and that's not the sad part. But he says, that income will have zero impact if we didn't have it. Oh, wonderful. So you heard from AB, who is coming back to us, and you heard from me, and we have shared with you all that even these big salaries do not replace a man. So, AB, since you're here, I want to just read the question. We did a round with Moose, and I'm going to read you his question. And then we will keep going because I actually saw a question from Snuggles, believe it or not, that I wanted to do around. Okay, so AB, if you can narrow it down to three, what are the most important tenets to a successful and content marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you guys can hear me and hear me well. Okay, thumbs up. That sounds good. Yes, so I apologize, guys. I'm traveling and my computer just died. Guess who forgot the charger today? Me, but I did jot down a few notes because I did see Moose's question too. So, as far as top three things or three things that are important, what I would say is the first one is to be flexible, right? That's one thing that I see a lot of women not doing. They're just not willing to they're just so rigid in some of the things that they have going on that they're not willing to be flexible. And I think in my experience with dating, it is one thing that can set you apart is just the level of flexibility. Sometimes it's gonna hurt to be flexible. Sometimes you're gonna have to bend in ways that don't feel natural. But I think if you show a man that you're willing to do that, you're willing to flex to things that are going to help his life and your lives ultimately together, that's going to be huge. So I think flexibility would be number one. Number two is move differently, right? Move differently as a wife, but moving differently and taking pride in that, which ultimately becomes number three, is taking the pride and moving differently. I can't tell you guys, like I said, there was these two women that are single as French toast heading into no man's land, telling me that my flexibility is a problem because I shouldn't have to change myself for a man. I don't know if anyone else agrees. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? And if you look at the results that they have, this is who's giving me advice. This is what Kevin was talking about. But this is the cycle continuing of those messages to the younger generation when, I'm actually kind of hopeful with this generation. I do think that the younger people coming up now do want to see a change. But when they're open to learning and when they're met with, you know, um, I don't know how to explain this in English, but in Cape Verdean Creole, there's a word called consejo, which means that people are trying to give you advice or wisdom. But sometimes that wisdom can be wrong, right? And the reason why number three for me was standing firm and moving differently, standing firm and being flexible, standing firm in what sets you apart is because in the long run, that's really going to help you out. It really is. So I'm excited. I hope that those three things meant something to someone that's watching and answers the question.
All right, absolutely, AB, and thank you so much for hopping back on. Ladies, we will do one last round. We usually keep this to an hour, so we'll do one more round and then close out. Thank you so much for all of the engagement. All right, so I have to get a question from none other than Snuggles. You all know Snuggles in the community asking to drop the link saying, I possibly will get camera ready. So I'll start and then we'll take a lap around. Snuggles is asking, what's the use of a husband when modern society has all the amenities that husbands used to provide? Hear me and hear me well. There is nothing that ever has been, is, or will be like a man. And we do not realize that, unfortunately, in our community until it's too late. Kevin often used to talk about that. All of these women with their big jobs and their baby Benzes and their, you know, high rise, condos. When that pandemic hit, and the fear that he saw in their eyes, having to go out to the store just to get paper supplies when our competition, was comfortable, hunkered down at home, and their men were out. I remember that. I remember my guy being able to get something as simple as paper towels on his side of town and bringing them to me so that I wouldn't have to leave, so that I would be safe, wrapping himself up before we were all vaccinated. There's nothing like a man, the way that he thinks. And I tell my guy all the time, we are emotional creatures, and I understand that. I get excited, I get sad, I can make impulsive decisions. That's one thing that I have to work on. But being able to talk to a man, I've talked to some of you all in the community, even as a boy mom, making decisions. The military might be in our future. I don't know anything about that. Being able to run, ideas by men. There's so many benefits. That a man brings to the table. So, yes, the amenities are out there. I do the grocery delivery services. I have handyman on deck if I need, something, fixed in the house. But there is absolutely nothing like the protection and the vision that a man has, and that's important to me. All right, so Lisa, I'll come to you. Let you answer Snuggles' question. What's the use of a husband when society has all of the amenities that husbands used to provide?
Um, I would not. I would not want to be um, without my husband. When the pandemic hit, my husband's one of those people that was still required to go out and he even had some kind of paperwork that says he could drive to work and do stuff like that. And I remember in my relationship with my husband, my health was so bad that he didn't want to watch me die. So he's like saying, you go get the help that you need to make yourself better, because he didn't want to watch me die on his watch. And in dealing with that, I had to, and he was like, and if you don't, then we're just going to have to divorce, separate, whatever that was going to be. And I remember that I can always remember, I don't remember exactly what was said or anything, but I know the feeling in my gut and all the things that ran through my mind when he was like, I'm going to have to divorce you or something because I'm not going to watch you die. And the way I felt and the thoughts that went through my head and how bad I was like, I was just in a rage to find a way to fix whatever I had that I wasn't doing. So for me, it was like a wake up moment. It was like being at the bottom and just realizing if I don't do something, there's no way I'm coming back from this. So I don't know how to put it into words, but it's more of a feeling. I don't want to have that feeling of not knowing what it is to have a husband, seeing what a lot of people are going through in this day and age. So it's really a feeling for me, and it's a feeling I don't ever want to feel again. I really can't describe it, but it's an awful feeling, and I wouldn't put it on anyone. And if I don't have my husband, I'm looking to like I still have my dad with me in my life, so I'd be like, I just feel like I need a man to call on. So if I can't call my husband, I'm calling dad. I'm calling my brother. I'm calling someone. I like that protection. And once you get you, I've had it for so long. I've had it my whole life basically. And once you get used to it, it's really hard um, to think about going not having it. So um, that's how I answer that question.
Thank you so much, Lisa. All right, Hermeisha, I'm coming to you. Snuggles is asking, what's the use of a husband when modern society has all the amenities husbands used to provide?
Do they provide protection? Do they provide a covering? Life insurance? Well, you know what I mean. But really, I would say, do they provide almost like a shield of your protection? Um, husbands are very valuable. Uh, they are the backbone of society. Like we need our men, and our children, our daughters, our sons need our men, or they need to see a two-parent household. Um, and so I would say for me, it's protection and it's security and also connection. At the end of the day, your job's going to replace you. At the end of the day, they're going to find somebody. You're replaceable, right? And so I think we just need to get back to the main thing, which is prioritizing relationships. This is something that our grandparents knew. They did that and they worked it out when stuff got hard. So, the job will only keep you there for so long and they will move on. But your husband, that's your person. Your wife, that's your person to the end of the end of the end of the end. So, you know, I think it's just so invaluable, and we need to value marriages even more. So I'm glad we're doing this, and a lot of people are starting to get the message on this. It's not about having babies and all the other things that continue to contribute to set us up for failure. We need to do this in the home and build the home. That's how we fight. That's how we fight. So
Thank you so much, Hermeisha. All right, Avi, you're going to come up next, but I do have to shout out, you all see him in the chat, the lead attorney. And I just have to say, I will always be grateful to lead attorney. Not only has he inspired a lot of us on our YouTube journey, but the Wives Club came out of the shadows in San Diego when the four of us met in person. We met behind the scenes in Kevin Samuel's Patreon. So this is year 3 of us connecting, but we all showed up in San Diego to support Lead and Brandon L. Jett, and we decided, let's go public with this. So thank you, Lead, for being here. All right, AV, we're going to come to you, and then we'll do one rapid fire overtime question that I saw from Brandon. So, okay, AV, your turn. What's the
Okay,
use?
I'm gonna try to do this fast. And there is a use. It's an interesting question, Snuggles, because I think sometimes when we ask questions like this, we're really looking at the way modern society has kind of morphed into what it's become today. 4 things here. Number one, human beings, we are not designed to be alone. We're designed to procreate, have family members, to be in groups, no matter what that means, whether it's outside of family, friendships. We are built to connect. So just kind of talking about this on a deeper level, we all have social needs. So yeah, I might be able to go get all these things on my own, but eventually, and this is what a lot of women start to see when they go down this modern path, is um, you're lonely. People get lonely. We talked about retirement last week. We talked about what the end of life looks like and how people are not building their futures. And this infrastructure is not built for single people, it's built for families. Social Security is working right now, but who knows? Like, is it going to be around in 20 years? A lot of our counterparts in other cultures, they do one thing really well, and they leverage families, and they leverage passing things down, they leverage legacy, they leverage estates. People get, they have homes that are left to them. Like one of my neighbors, for instance, I was talking about my house when I first moved in. I was so excited about it, to be 29, buying a house. Like I was so excited about this, right? And I was just like, how much did you guys buy your house for? Oh, my mom, like this is a 60-year-old man. My mom gifted it to me. Like that was a little different. It was a little different. So I think about that infrastructure, and I think about other cultural aspects that happen over here is different. But lastly, the other thing that's happening is you see a lot of single parent households, and you know one thing I really learned about watching Kevin's show is the level of single parents that weren't financially savvy and weren't planning ahead for the future. Some of them were okay with being single and depending on their children to take care of them later in their elder years. That's a huge burden. I actually have some elderly folks in my family right now. And it's even with 4 or 5 siblings, it's a burden. That's huge. So, to see the level of people that we're talking about this, and how widespread it is, I think there's a bigger societal issue. So, Snuggles, I just went on a philosophical tangent here because your question was that good. But at the end of the day, um, there is a use for men. There is a use in having a family. There is a use in being together. So that's my answer.
Thank you so much, AV. And we are going to wrap up. We're going to do one rapid fire round because I saw the lead attorney said, great question, Brandon Eljet. So I know, let's just say this, you all. Brandon told me he has over 3 dozen questions. Okay. So we will do this multiple times again, but we are at time. But I'm going to read this question and then we'll answer in like 15 seconds each. To the ladies on the panel, Let's say you all are married. If your husband walks in one day and says, "I want you to shut down all of your social media, including YouTube," would you do it? And if not, why? I'll go first and say, "Yes, absolutely." And the reason why for me, the reason why you all even see me on YouTube is because of my guy. He is the one who said, "Maggie, nobody is doing what you're doing. The young girls need to know this." Oh no, I was the one. I was quiet in my cul-de-sac with my apron on. The reason I have a cooking show, the reason the Wives Club is here is because he pushed me out of my comfort zone to come do this. So if he says stop, I shut it down. I'll ask for one last episode to say goodbye to everyone and then follow his lead. So for me, yes, absolutely. Lisa, how would you answer that?
Yes, I'd say, okay, that what you want? I'll shut it down. No questions asked. I respect what he has to say. I'm sure there's a very good reason for it. There always is. So I'm just like, yes, that will be done, and go from there.
All right, AV, how would you answer that question?
Yes, 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 7 times. Yes to the seventh power. Yes. And I don't even need to give you guys context on it. I was never big on social media before I got on it. Literally before I got on YouTube, I had like 50 friends on Instagram and purposely hid on social media platforms. So yes.
And then lastly, Hermeisha, what do you say if your guy says shut it down?
I would say he ain't said nothing but a word. Because really, I'm visible online because of my businesses. So if he's telling me to shut down, then retire me, hashtag.
I love it. I absolutely love it. This has been an absolute joy. We are at time for tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the smoke show. We will do this again for you all. Thank you for being flexible with the time change to accommodate travel. We really get so much out of this, and we appreciate you all so well. If I missed your comment or if you have another question, we'll get to it. So the Wives Club is usually here for you every Friday night. So we won't meet tomorrow, obviously, but next week, Friday, we will meet again at our usual time, 8 p.m. And we have a very special guest who has agreed to be up on the panel. You all know her and love her, and that's all that I will say. So, yes, thank you. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you so much for the feedback. Thank you so much. Please tell a friend. We are here because Kevin said, "Where are the older women to teach the young?" So, that is what we're trying to do. All right, everybody. Thank you so much and good night.